every industry has its ups and downs, from cereal to television, but most importantly, video games. Notably, gaming had its greatest depression during the early 80s in the video game crash of 1983, caused by Atari, ET, and on a whole, oversaturation. Back then, video games were small toys, a comparatively small market without any real respect behind it. But in the modern day, video games are far from small peaches. Video games are massive. In fact, video games on average make 3 times the amount of movies, music, and TV industries combined. There is no doubt that video games are a massive industry. But if you were to open a brochure or newspaper, you would see that almost every massive company in gaming is struggling hard. It seems like every other week, Xbox is shutting down another one of its studios, and PlayStation has the continued problem of lacking any games. You see, they've released some great things this generation, but their total amount of exclusives is less than a rat's appetite to eating poison. And Xbox, they just shut down the studio behind Hi-Fi Rush, one of their latest hit successes. Then just a day later, the company said that they needed smaller scale games. Small scale games such as Hi-Fi Rush. So please, may I present my unhinged conspiracy on the death of AAA gaming. So what does this mean? Why is it happening? You see, gaming culture has shifted quite a bit in the past few years. Before the age of cheap and easily accessible internet, games followed a simple model. Single-player campaigns that would usually last between 5 to 30 hours with local multiplayer on the side, or the opposite, a local multiplayer game with loads of content followed by a short side mode for single player. As internet grew in popularity, the meta shifted towards higher budget online multiplayer games, with expandable content via purchasable DLC. Continuing on, the meta shifted to free online games with DLC out the wazoo. This proved to be profitable, but not profitable enough. So now we're seeing $70 games with loads of DLC, only playable with internet, no matter if it's single player or multiplayer. Not everyone in the industry follows this, let alone the majority, but within the largest companies in gaming, you're sure to see at least a handful of games like this release, and in some cases, release yearly. The problems only start to come in once you try to make money. For several games, that's no problem. For example, Call of Duty, 2K Basketball, and Madden Football. All of these will continue being profitable for years and would require a serious shift in consumer habits to change. But then we have other games that still follow this trend. Games like Assassin's Creed being $70 and has tons of DLC, which seems to get more contentious with each release. AAA games are becoming more expensive to develop and much riskier to release as the years go on. Enough so that they may disappear completely within the next few years. So who's to fix it? Here I introduce our little friend Undertale, or Stardew Valley, or Animal Well. Indie games. But before we get into those gems, how about you learn a little bit how you can make gems of your own? Today's sponsor, Southern New Hampshire University, is here to have me tell you about their degree in video game development. Because at SNHU, you can learn everything you need to bring your dream game out of the gutters of imagination and into the hands of an audience. With lessons in game physics, UI design, and enemy intelligence design, you can create the boss encounters that the world needs today. And thanks to SNHU, you'll also learn how to use 3D modeling programs such as Blender, available to you with SNHU's affordable game development degree. Now, SNHU has faculty with experience in the game industry, so even after you graduate, SNHU will be there to help prepare you for the job search. So if you're at all interested in this or any other program available at SNHU, or just want to help support this channel, go to snhu.edu/arctic or visit the link in the description. Thanks, as always, SNHU, for sponsoring this video. Now back to big mode. Indie games. They're the saviors of gaming, you know. And that's not much of an exaggeration. You see, while the industry was fine before indies came around, everything around is propped up to succeed when we have indies. And if you need any more example of that, may I present one of the first, and by far the biggest indie of all time, Tetris. You don't think that's indie? Well, let me give you your monthly lesson on Tetris. You see, Tetris was made by a team of Alexei Pajitnov, and that's all. One guy made the biggest game of all time. Sorta. There's a whole history of fun and fights, but when it comes down to brass tacks, it was all one guy, which is incredible, because without Tetris, Nintendo, and henceforth the rest of gaming, would be on a completely different trajectory. And the same applies to indie games today. So may I present Big Mode. He can't publish video games, they said. They'll be bad, they said. Well, when the YouTuber Video Game Donkey made his publishing company, Big Mode, and proceeded to release one of the best indie games this year, he definitely proved these people wrong. Donkey's accomplishments with Big Mode is a testament to the power of indie games, and it shows how little we actually need to rely on AAA studios. While Big Mode and other indie publishing studios certainly aren't cheap to run, compared to the Goliaths over at Microsoft and Sony, it's incredible how these indies succeed when everything else crumbles. I've already discussed some of Microsoft's and Sony's failings, but let's dive a little deeper into that. Here we have Xbox, a subsidiary of Microsoft. Xbox is the third largest developer and publisher of video games. Recently, in October 2023, they acquired Activision, responsible for Call of Duty, Candy Crush, and not much else. Before that, they acquired Bethesda, responsible for Skyrim and Fallout. This, and many more acquisitions before then, is quite telling of how Microsoft sees gaming. You see, they're not the type to cultivate a team over several decades made of unique developers creating brand new gaming experiences for everyone. No, they buy out whoever the biggest companies are at the time, milk them for all that they're worth, and then ditch them as soon as possible. In fact, Microsoft at one point even tried acquiring Nintendo, to which they were literally laughed out the room. Now let's go through the future of gaming if it were decided by Xbox. First off, no more physical games. That affects their bottom lines, so we simply can't have that. Next, everything is online. Otherwise, how can we be expected to give Xbox our money and data at a whim's notice? And last off, no more consoles. At least not consoles that cost so much for them to make. Everything will be streaming online over their Netflix of gaming, Xbox Game Pass. For years, this is exactly how they wanted the industry to go. No more physical games. Everything is a $20 a month subscription that you pay for the rest of your life. Unfortunately, not quite everything can work out that well. And thank goodness. While it seems like most of these companies were purchased for the fact that their games could be put on Game Pass, it seems like that won't be the case anymore. You see, in the example of the Call of Duty, they've had internal debates whether or not they should put the next one on Game Pass, because for the $10 to $20 a month you spend on Game Pass, it might not be worth the loss of the $70 one-time fee of Call of Duty. It seems like the whole reason Hi-Fi Rush was shut down is because it wasn't profitable enough. And it wasn't profitable enough because it was on Game Pass. Now, Sony is a bit more relaxed of a story. Most of their faults come from incompetence rather than sheer stupidity, which might sound very similar, but it's a fine line of separation. Whereas Microsoft seems to be deliberately nuking everything that made them somewhat successful, Sony is just flopping around like a fish. Despite Sony PlayStation's latest console being 4 years old now, over half of their users are still on the last generation of consoles. Worse than that, Sony has even said that the PS5 has peaked in sales. From this point on, they're only expected to sell less and less each year. The biggest reason this is happening is most likely due to the centuries-old adage, PlayStation has no games. Starting with the PS3, it was often joked that the PS3 had no games, because initially, it didn't. With its weird CPU inside, developers usually spent less effort developing for the system, leading to less exclusives overall. Now, more than a decade later, people say the same for the PS5. But why? The PlayStation 5 released in 2020, a year notable for many things. Due to this interesting launch year, hardly any units were sold. making it rather risky to develop for exclusively. So most games made for it were also ported to PC and the PS4. 4 years down the line, developers have continued doing this for the most part, and at the time of this video, there are literally only 12 exclusives, and some could argue that games like Demon's Souls and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth don't count as exclusives. If you compare that to the, let's say, longer list of exclusives on Switch, and slightly less long list for the PS4, it's certainly depressing. Now, if you take that and the increased alienation of their fans that play on computer with things like forced PS accounts on games like Helldivers 2, they're in a world of mess. So where does this leave the industry? PlayStation is completely flailing about, Xbox is hanging by a thread, and indie games, well, indie games are doing rather well. But for a Nintendo channel, I've been avoiding talking about Nintendo a lot. So let's rectify that by at last talking about Epic Games. I'm sorry, Nintendo, we'll get to you in just a second. We just have to talk about Epic Games. So Epic Games, responsible for Unreal Engine and Fortnite. Unreal Engine, known for being the biggest engine in the world, used to make most video games out of AAA studios. Rather impressive, right? But then they made Fortnite. Fortnite saved the world, which no one plays and no one likes. Fortnite is a tech demo for Unreal Engine turned PUBG ripoff. Once the Battle Royale genre blew up, it took the world by storm. Everyone loves Fortnite, and why wouldn't they? It's got admittedly addicting gameplay, and it's got constantly changing world and mechanics. What's not to love? Better yet, it's free. That is, of course, unless you want a banana skin. Fortnite entirely makes its revenue from microtransaction cosmetics. It's kind of ingenious. They certainly weren't the first to do it, but with a mix of FOMO and IP-driven products, they're making a killing. Look, it's Peter Griffin from the hit TV show Family Guy. Oh, but he's only available in the temporarily available Battle Pass. Looks like you have to spend $10 to get that now. Oh, what's that? Zuko from my favorite cartoon, Avatar? Well, I guess I can just get the Battle Pass again. But nope, he's only available for $20 in the daily rotating item shop. He might come back eventually, but who knows when that's gonna happen. Truly, the only thing keeping Fortnite from being bigger than Disney or Apple or Microsoft is the fact that this is only a shooter. If only they had all this, but also in a racing game or a Lego-based survival game. And I'm sure you can tell where I'm going with that. In the last year, Epic has expanded Fortnite from not just a shooter, but to an everything game. Between the handful of modes they've created in-house and the thousands of games made by fans using their weaker version of Unreal Engine, Fortnite is far more than just another shooter with Doom Guy in it. It's a metaverse. For those of you who don't know, essentially it's a collaborative experience between multiple different games and genres and whatever else to create one cohesive experience that all interacts with itself. You might know this from things like VR chat or whatever Facebook is doing in the VR metaverse, but I like to call it the Robloxification of gaming. You see, Roblox is built on the idea of user-generated gaming, and it's made a killing off of that. If you ask anyone under 25 what Roblox is, they will share decades of nostalgic memories from it. Now, it would be one thing if Fortnite and Epic Games was solo in this, but Disney just bought a $1.5 billion stake in Epic Games, which means they're dipping their toes into the metaverse. A dream, a world that I don't want to live in. Now, it might not be a terrible thing. Fortnite is admittedly fun, like I said in the past, but it is a very interesting future. Now, where it seems Xbox is heading to game streaming and PlayStation is heading 6 feet under, Epic Games is headed to the sky with the metaverse, and to create what I call the one game experience. In this Epic Games Disney-controlled future, all you have to do is boot up Fortnite on your device of choice, whether it's your computer, console, or watch, select your desired skin from insert franchise here, and at last select whatever game of choice. This hypothetical is not entirely baseless. A mix of rumors and announcements are having us believe that another Epic Games owned IP, Fall Guys, will be coming to Fortnite as an additional mode. And once this happens, it's only a matter of time before the same happens to Rocket League, or any other game they feel like. In other words, the one game experience. So what's Luigi got to do with all of this? Well, nothing much, besides taking this entire board and punting it across the world. Because Nintendo takes everything there and spits in the face of it. You see, as the oldest player in this industry, Nintendo has seen some serious crap. Nintendo has been in some serious crap. But I can say for certain that they have never been so obviously dumb as those guys over there. Now, we all know since the Wii U and even earlier with the N64 that Nintendo isn't guaranteed to succeed, but let's just keep in mind how the rest of the industry has fared over the past decade. Then show how Nintendo has thrived. Considering the Wii U's utter failure, the Nintendo Switch started strong, with over 17 million units sold in the first year alone. But that means nothing. The Switch is a gimmicky console. Who's really to say if this success can last? Well, if we continue on to the present day with a pandemic between now and then, we can see Nintendo's sales skyrocket to 141.3 million consoles sold so far. This puts Nintendo in third place for the highest sold consoles of all time, right behind the Nintendo DS at 154 million and the PS2 at 155. Now, that's certainly impressive, but the Switch is declining in sales, and the real determining factor for success is how many games they've sold. So let's do the math. Based on Nintendo's latest financial update, the Switch has sold 1,235.82 million games/software, or in other words, over a billion. Having sold 15.7 million console units this year and 199.67 software units this year, that means for every console bought this year, they also bought 12.7 games. Seems impressive, right? Well, let's compare that to the PS2 and DS. At the end of both of their lives, the PS2 had 8.9 games per console, and on the DS, 6.1. So, yes, it's impressive. But at last, you might be wondering, where do they go from here? What cataclysmic mistake will they make that will send ripple effects that will end up destroying the industry in the end? Well, I'm here to say, they probably won't. Probably. Nintendo has done things unique from other companies that might be a sign of them leaving or neglecting the gaming side of their business, but I see these additions as a safety net. For example, their recent ventures into movies and theme parks. Nintendo released the Super Mario Bros. Movie last year, and has a sequel to it and a Zelda movie on the way. Additionally, Nintendo has stated their intentions to build a cinematic universe around their properties. Usually following that sentence is the death of the company, as shown by Warner Bros.' numerous failed attempts to make a DC universe and similar projects. However, I feel Nintendo has the chance to survive, considering its continued power of IP, and with its developers having a large hand in the development of these projects. On the other hand, we have their theme parks, which could only be a smart idea. Part of the reason Disney is even still alive today is because they had their parks as a backbone. So Nintendo's investments into theme parks was a genius decision. While Xbox is constantly firing multiple branches of employees, Nintendo has openly stated that it's aiming to hire employees straight out of college or in the middle level. This actively supports growth within the industry, leading to success for everyone. Where Xbox is killing even the most talented teams of developers, Nintendo encourages success worldwide. So at last, where does this leave the industry? Well, I certainly can't say it's in a great place. Before the Nintendo Switch, Microsoft and Sony held well over half the stakes in console gaming. But now, as they're repeatedly struggling to meet the needs of the consumers, they're far from half. I'm not going to say they'll completely disappear within the next decade, but it's obvious the tides are shifting. Now, the need for accessible gaming will always exist because PC gaming simply isn't accessible. But with the Nintendo Switch continuing to succeed, and with simple PC solutions like the Steam Deck, the need for a traditional console will fade. Gaming will never get as bad as it was in 1983. But in the future, you might not be playing Call of Duty Black Ops 3 remake/re-release on your PlayStation 7. You'll be playing Animal Well 2 on your new Nintendo Switch 2 XL. But anyways, thank you for watching. Make sure to shampoo and condition your hair, and as always, keep cool.